Hey Cis, it's a weekly shakedown of the binary walls around us.
Breaking it out and building a bridge.
Checking our biases with empathy and humility and questioning the status quo.
It's about building allyship that is intentional and confident.
Transgender Day of Awareness is special because you have to respect people and who they are.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Hey Cis. Today's episode is extra special as we are celebrating Transgender Day of Visibility, which is happening this Wednesday.
So the International Transgender Day of Visibility, also known as TDoV, occurs every year on March 31st. This day is dedicated to celebrating transgender people, their contributions to society, and raising awareness of discrimination faced by transgender people worldwide. The day was founded by U.S. transgender activist Rachel Crandall of Michigan in 2009 as a reaction to the lack of LGBTQ+ recognition of transgender people. So it's really important to kind of understand the distinction, I think, between the Transgender Day of Visibility versus the Transgender Day of Remembrance, which occurs in November. So originally, TDoR, which is the Transgender Day of Remembrance, was the only well-known transgender-centered day. And this mourned the murders and suicides of transgender people, which is extremely important, but it did not allow people to the ability to celebrate the living members of the transgender community.
Which is so true, right? Because we have on one side Transgender Day of Remembrance, which is really, like you said, important to acknowledge. But without this day of visibility, without being able to celebrate the trans community that is all around us, that is here and working with us and going to school with us, and that we're going to continue to have the Transgender Day of Remembrance, because in actuality, really without visibility, you have invisibility, which is essentially erasure, I think is how I kind of think of it, right, Isaac?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree.
Yeah, and so when we think about, celebrating our living trans community, I love Deshanna Neal's words. We recently spoke to Deshanna Neal, who is the author of My Rainbow, and she was talking about her daughter, Trinity, and here's what she had to say about transgender people and awareness.
I wanted people to see her Blackness as something that was so beautiful. The only time you would hear about Black trans femmes and girls and women was usually after they died. And it really, I'm like, we are more than our deaths, celebrate us while we're here. And she's here and she's amazing.
I think everything that she said is so incredibly true because, it's important to look at trans people as trans people, but there's so much more to trans people. There's so much intersectionality between that. So you have to recognize trans experiences and how diverse and unique they are. So for instance, my experience as a non-binary white person living in Canada is going to be completely different from, a Black trans person or Latino trans person potentially, living in the United States or living in another part of the world. So, as important as it is to focus on the facts that we're celebrating trans experiences, I think it's really important to also focus on those other aspects that contribute to our transness.
Yeah, so on this day, around the world, with COVID, obviously this year, there's not a lot happening as far as celebrations go in person, understandably. But this has always been a really big day on social media. And you can check out the campaigns that are happening all around the world on your social media platforms like Facebook or Twitter and Instagram. And see what the trans community is doing by checking out the hashtag TDoV 2021 or hashtag TDoV. And you're going to see some amazing people posting selfies and sharing their personal stories and generally working on raising awareness and increasing visibility all around. And so when Isaac and I were looking at this podcast and this particular episode, we wanted to reach out to people that we know within the community and people who may be tuning in to our podcast. And we asked listeners to share with us what they found important and what they found particularly meaningful to them around Transgender Day of Visibility. Let's hear a few of their clips.
Hi, I'm the mother of a 5-year-old transgender daughter, and Trans Day of Visibility means that my girl can grow up in a world where she can take up space and just focus on being a kid. Our non-binary kid turns 9 this year, and we live on PEI. And Trans Day of Visibility is important for me because there isn't enough representation out there for trans and non-binary kids, and they just don't get to see themselves reflected very much in media, in books, just in everyday conversations and life. And so, unfortunately, we have to make a special day and make a special effort to let them know that they are loved and seen and accepted and what that looks like.
I'm 7 and I'm a transgender girl. Transgender Day of Awareness is special because you have to respect people and who they are. Because you can teach people about transgender. I want people to treat me good and respect who I am.
So for me, what stands out is I believe that any members of our community need to be recognized for the contributions and who they are and what they bring to the world around them. But in particular, I believe marginalized groups certainly do need to have a day, if possible, just set aside so that we pause and take a moment and we reset and we look at the contributions in our community and what a struggle and that transgender people have in our communities and institutions in our society. So with that, on March the 31st, I'm really hoping that that we take that time and we pause, all of us, and really celebrate the incredible contributions within our communities, within our provinces, countries, and all over the world.
Trans Day of Visibility for me as a parent of a trans child gives me hope that other family members, caregivers, friends, and the community will come to understand trans people as we have. As people who have no experience within the trans community prior to having a child who is trans, we needed the trans community, and I'm so thankful for those who were willing to be courageous and be visible and fight for trans rights, who came before my son so that we were able to best understand how to support him and to become familiar with the community that we weren't familiar with. The Trans Day of Visibility should hopefully allow people to accept that being trans is not a deficit, it's not an illness, it's not bad, it's who people are, and it's another beautiful piece of diversity in the human form. I hope that people will come to accept trans folks as they should, and the violence against them will stop. We're a long way from that right now, but the hope is there, and I know that things are getting better.
I feel that Trans Day of Visibility and Trans Week of Visibility is ever so important, especially this year. With everything that is going on in the world and the hatred that we see each and every day, trans women of color are disproportionately killed and taken out far too soon. We have to look to our past, we have to create our present and hope for the future, and make sure that everyone has the equal rights and the equal understanding that we all deserve the same rights. We need to make sure that our non-binary and trans community is uplifted, felt heard, felt needed, and felt wanted. We are here, and we are not going anywhere.
I just want to take a second to thank everyone for sending along your messages and your stories and for being vulnerable and telling us, what TDoV means to you. So I think with that, maybe we can kind of dive into what TDoV means to us. Like, is there anything in particular that you're celebrating on this day or anything that you're special that you're going to be doing to celebrate?
Yeah, Isaac, well, I'm glad that you asked that. I thought about, we moved into a new home in a new neighborhood, and I thought about putting a flag up, a trans flag, in our front window. And unfortunately, our boxes are still stacked high in the basement, and I need to dig them out. But I think it's a really great day that I always have a trans bracelet that is on my water bottle that I carry around with me. So I'll probably take that out and about or put on a pin on my lapel, or just generally even start a conversation. Actually, it was fantastic. My kids go to a little convenience store here in the neighborhood, and they said to me, like, when they go in, the owner there always asks kids, so what are your pronouns? How?
Oh, really?
That, right? Like, I just think it's so great. But I want to ask you, Isaac, so like when we put this out to some people, to share with us what Transgender Day of Visibility means to them, there was some reaction from some parents that said, I'd rather not participate because my kiddo is stealth and I don't want to out them. Now, obviously, we said this is completely anonymous. It's audio only and you're completely safe here with us. But that whole thing, like around, like that really kind of isn't the essence of it, isn't it? Is that idea that somebody actually has to live stealth. I mean, if you want to, because it's your choice, that's one thing. But when you have to do it for safety reasons and all that, I just think, that's, at the bottom line of why this is so important, so that we can move beyond this place where we have to hide our kids or hide ourselves because we're afraid of being accepted or violence or not getting a job or not being rented to or anything like that happens, these awful things that happen to the trans community and gender nonconforming people all the time.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note too that visibility comes and it really comes and goes, and it really depends on the person. Visibility to one person might just be having their pronouns and maybe their, email signature, or maybe having their pronouns on their Twitter bio. But to another person, maybe it is like wearing a trans flag or being open in the community and being openly, trans or queer. And it's important, especially on a day like this, to not just focus on the big things, not just focus on the individuals who are comfortable and capable of putting themselves out there, because I know myself, it's a huge privilege to be able to have the platform that I do and to be able to speak on this podcast about my own experiences. And that's how I choose to be visible with my transness. But that doesn't mean that every single trans person, to be visible, you need to be doing it to the caliber, that I am or that another person is. Just, being yourself on Transgender Day of Visibility is you being visible enough, and you being authentically yourself is what's most important in whatever means or fashion that is. And I think it's really important too for allies to understand that, trans people will come out when they feel that they need to, and it doesn't need to be a big, huge event. It could just be kind of, as I said, as simple as putting your pronouns in your bio, or like putting, a trans flag in your signature, things like that. Like, that's enough to be visible. And you don't even have to do that to begin with, to be visible and to be authentically yourself. It's important to, have these days where we feel like we can, kind of step out, and there's conversations happening to make more safe spaces for people if they do choose to come out on Transgender Day of Visibility. And that's the day that they decide that they want to be the most visible.
Yeah, because I think this is a day, isn't it, like on social media, where you will find a lot of people coming out on social media for the very first time.
Mm-hmm.
Which is always just so moving and so beautiful. And then, on the flip side, you might have somebody say, like, my kiddo, and I know, of some of the people with kids who, they've transitioned young. They're feeling like they're in a safe space right now. They're really happy. But because they're so young, they're not aware of the global struggles, perhaps, that, the fellow trans community has shared. And so for them, it's just like, it's a day, Mom. I'm just going to get on with it. I'm off to play soccer, or, I'm just going to go to art, or, I ask my kiddo, do you want to share something about what it means to you? And, it's not something that they really felt pushed, say, into doing, but it's just because to them, they're accepted by everybody that they need to be accepted by. They don't feel like they have to hide. They don't feel like unsafe where they are right now. And I just think that's where we need to get to for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a great space. It's a great place to be.
Yeah. Just feeling that you can, be your authentic self in whatever means that is. Our uniqueness of our own identities, we need to, recognize that, kind of as I said towards the beginning, that there's so many other layers on top of just being trans that, you know, a lot of trans people have to go through, whether it be being BIPOC, being disabled, being neurodivergent, anything like that, experiencing homelessness, everything that is in our own identities. Being trans is just one piece of the puzzle. And to whatever degree you celebrate your transness or you celebrate your identities is completely up to you. But I think it's so important to have a day that you can just, you know, freely choose if you want to be like, hey, I'm going to participate in today. Because, you know, of course, there's been some years in the past that I've been like, okay, it's just another day. Like, you know, like life moves on kind of thing. But it's important to recognize when people do use this day as a means to help elevate their experiences and they feel, you know, passionate that today is a day that they feel comfortable doing that. You know, and any day could be that day, of course.
For cis people then, for, you know, someone like myself or some, you know, someone who's cisgender, which as we all know is that your gender identity, aligns with your sex as assigned at birth, get involved and really listen to some of these stories. Maybe, you know, if you are on social media, Google that hashtag and take a listen to what's out there and what people are sharing. And then maybe, you know, share the love, like, you know, share something meaningful, you know, on your timeline or comment, you know, in a kind way or, you know, share a like and let them know that they've been seen, can be really great. And like you mentioned, which is always just so easy to do, you know, like just put your pronouns, in those digital signatures, in your email signature, take a little step that, you know, might feel uncomfortable to you. But it will go so far in creating positive conversations around inclusion and visibility and awareness, that you can really feel like you are doing your part, that you are helping to make a difference, rather than putting it all upon the onus of the LGBTQ plus community.
Especially, you know, with kind of day celebrations, it's important to bring up the topic of folks who decide to use this day as like a sole way to support the LGBTQ community, but they don't do anything the other 364 days of the year. And that's why it's, you know, it's really important to have these conversations. And as important as it is to do it on this day, it's equally as important to do it every single day of the year. You have to be authentic in your allyship and, you know, make sure that you're always making space for trans people. And as important as TDoV is to trans people, I think it's equally as important for cisgender people and allies, because it's an amazing day to just go online and learn something new, or exactly as Cindy just said, just strike up a conversation with someone or support someone who's trans. Go out of your way to do something kind for another person on that day.
Yeah, there's a really great, and now, I mean, it's gotten great reviews. I have not watched it myself, but, there's a new, I think it's a movie coming out, called Cowboys. I don't know if you've heard about that, but, you can Google, you know, movies that are, you know, positively featuring trans characters. This one, is supposed to be amazing and is up for some awards. I believe one is the Sundance Award, and it features a young actor, talks about a trans youth and transitioning and love and family, and, you know, even celebrating with a bowl of popcorn with your kids and watching something like that, or checking out I Am Jazz, or watching there's some great music videos online from some amazing trans artists, and listening to some music, talking about the lyrics. That's another fun way that you could, you know, just spend a half an hour to an hour with your family or just on your own, exploring, you know, what's going on in a positive way in the trans community. You know, I do think it'll be interesting when the real stats come out, when they talk about, you know, upwards to 1 to 3% of people identify underneath the trans umbrella. But we know that number is higher. We know because of, you know, the amount of barriers there are to being able to disclose who you are, that those numbers are actually much smaller than what they are in reality.
Yeah. And like on that point too, like it's so important to realize that, because a lot of time when, you know, people are considering trans people who aren't, you know, the nicest towards the trans community, they're always like, oh, it's just such a small portion of society. It's such like a small, minuscule group of people. Like, who is it actually going to impact? But exactly your point, that the numbers that we're actually seeing statistically are astronomically smaller than what it actually is. And that's because we have legislature out there that if, you identify as trans, you can not get health care, or you can be barred from certain areas, or your children can't even, participate in sports. And that's the reason why trans people and just queer people in general aren't coming out and aren't being open about who they are. There's so many people out there who can't be visible, because if they are visible, it's, it's choosing between your happiness versus your safety. And that's why, it's important on days where people can celebrate that we celebrate, and on the days that we mourn, because, sometimes you might just not have that day again throughout the year. So you got to take from what you get and kind of, use it to the best of your abilities. And as, sad as that is, in a lot of areas in the world, that kind of is the reality. But like, these things are all happening at the same time as a state is able to legally bar trans people from accessing healthcare. Which is,
or try to pass a bill to prevent trans kids from participating in sports competitions as well. I mean, all of that is happening. We're really fortunate, aren't we, up here in Canada, that, while there is still a lot happening, that it is transphobic, we do have those human rights protections, at least, that can benchmark, and help to prevent, these kind of bills being put forward to actually take away basic human rights of transgender individuals. But it is important to continue to raise awareness, because,
it's, I think there was a comic once, or a post, I can't remember, but it was saying, the year, I can't believe the year is 2021, and, certain areas of the world are still operating in like 1940.
I know, it's so true, right? It blows my mind when we see, we hear that trans youth can be prevented in certain states in the U.S. from participating in sports, and about the healthcare and kids, or people being potentially banned from access to healthcare or medical care because of their gender identity. That is all happening, and that is why it's really important to raise awareness. And, Isaac, I was having a look online to see like what people are doing and how they're celebrating. And, one particular event that came up, so it was the 2021 Transgender Day of Visibility, and that's being hosted by the Transgender Health and Wellness Center. Now, it's sold out, unfortunately, online, but some of the headliners, I guess, and people that are participating through music and song and storytelling is Ryan Casada, Skylar Kurgel, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and Nico Stormont. And we can put that on the blog, but because if you're interested, you can definitely log on to YouTube and check out, which I did, some of their videos, which are great. I know Ryan Casada has a song on YouTube called Daughter. And I was also listening to Nico and Raquel perform their song Libra Gemini, which was also pretty cool. But it's it's kind of cool to kind of see what's happening around the world, and there definitely are some things you can participate in online if you Google it and then you log in through eventbrite.ca.
COVID times aren't stopping celebrations. It's definitely well needed when it comes to the queer community, because it's so hard to have accessible and safe online platforms for queer people. So it's going to be nice once we're able to meet in person again. Of course, when it's safe to do so, but.
Exactly. And speaking of safe spaces, I just found one that is also happening on TDoV called Hands-On Weekly Crafting Circle. And that's done by the SFSS out on campus. So I don't know I have no idea if that's like San Francisco Secondary School. I totally made that up. No, it's not. It's actually Canadian. It's the Simon Fraser Student Society. So that's kind of cool. And it's a weekly crafting one. It's on Eventbrite, and it's spelled hands-on with an exclamation point. And it's a cool online crafting project that you can get together and you can do on TDoV as well. So if you have time and you're looking for something to do, that might be one that's fun to check out. out and being hosted from the West Coast. But anyway, no, there's a lot. And if you can always reach out to us too at Connect at Simply Good Form if you're looking for some ideas on how to celebrate or how to get involved. But then again, like I said, just Google hashtag TDoV 2021 and just have a listen and have a view and have a say. And help us all raise more awareness about why it's so important for everyone to have the opportunity to be visible and be seen and be safe. Well, that's all the time we have today, folks. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Hey Sis.
If you have any questions you want to ask or want to join in on the conversation, email us at connect@simplygoodform.com.
Thank you all, and remember, inclusion matters.